Okay, noodle roots. I'm not going to use a whole noodle because I've just got a little piece left over. Don't need a whole lot to do them. Full noodle, gloves, heat gun, knife, scissors, paint, respirator if you'll be painting indoors. I made this to hold the noodle so I have 2 free hands to work, and I've got my plastic up in the ceiling above me so I can just pull it down and attach it where I need it. I'm going to start by splitting the noodle down the middle. And so we're going to take one of these sides, split that too. My scissors. I'm going to start trimming the noodle, not my fingers. Kind of tapering it to a point. I'm trying to get some of these angles off of it. Scissors are double. And you don't have to be very accurate. You can get pretty sloppy, and a lot of it's going to get melted off anyways. These scissors are dull. And you might want to make them different lengths too. Cut the end off of one of them. Make a little stubby. Just a little stubby side branch. Maybe that little cut on the side branch will just make that a little bit longer so we can curl it away. Off that one, make it a little shorter. Alright, so got a basic little thing. Put it on my support that I made. Take my heat gun. Start heating up on the outside and inside of the noodle just a little bit. So I feel it starting to give each side some. Pull it away a little bit. If you hold it there for a second and let it cool, it'll stay. Somewhat. Wear a glove when you're working with the plastic. You don't need to so much with the noodle, but once you start handling hot plastic, you're probably going to want to. So it doesn't really matter, like that one's flat on the tip. It doesn't really matter if it's not to a point because it's all going to be hidden anyways. I'm just trying to get I'll take this one kind of to the side. I'm just trying to get a basic shape. They'll bend more. As you put the plastic on there, you can force them, their shapes. I'm just trying to get them separated and get them started. Okay. Now we can start putting some plastic on it. And what I was doing was just coming around like that. I got the plastic meet up on the back. It kind of sticks to itself, but not real well. You hit it with the heat gun, it'll start to melt. You can touch it real quick and now it sticks. And you just kind of wrap all the way around that way. Once you get the back stuck, you can go around and the rest of it will shrink to the noodle. Top, just pick a branch. I don't twist it up now. Pick a branch, wrap it around it, twist it at the top. Melt your twist together a little bit so it holds, and then you can start shrinking it to the noodle. If you see the noodle start to give and separate the plastic like it did right there, just make sure you're wearing a glove. Just grab it and squeeze it real quick, and it should cool it down enough that the noodle stops melting. Just keep sticking it down and patting it. Places like here where I've got a little bridge between the two, you just come in with the heat, use the heat gun to cut it. And the glove to push it down. And it sticks pretty well to the foam. I can't really put a lot of heat to it yet with just one little layer of plastic on there, but once you get a bunch of layers built up, you can put more on there. And I always cut them at an angle too, instead of straight across. I cut them loose. And once you get that first layer on, you start bringing it down and letting it bunch up so that it makes these lines. That will give you the wood texture. And you can't go heavy on the heat until you get some layers built up. I'm just tacking it down so that it holds where I want it. And getting it bunched up and lines formed. And I did burn myself quite a bit making the arch. This glove I'm using isn't really all that thick. I've got a thicker one I use once I really start putting heat to it and melting it. This one's fine just for getting things to stick where I want. Because I'm not really melting the plastic right now, I'm just heating it up enough that it clings to itself in the noodle when it shrinks. Stuck, cut it off again. Just keep bringing pieces down, sticking them on there. Kind of look for areas where you might have a thin spot where you don't have as many layers built up as others. What happens when you get a few layers built up is you can put the heat to it for longer, and you see it starts to bubble and melt. And when that dries, or hardens, it will look almost just like wood once it's painted. Once you get some protection on the noodle, you can go pretty heavy with the heat on it. If you don't have a lot on it, when you put the heat to it, you'll melt the noodle underneath. So get a few layers down before you start melting things together. And you see it bubble up right there. And then I just pat it. And just keep cutting it and adding layers. I'm sweating my tail off out here. It's about 90 degrees today. And it's probably about 100 in my workshop. Plus the heat gun, so makes it even worse. And you see how those ridges start to form from the wrinkles. Pat those down and then come back. Heat them up again. You see the noodle melt a little bit. I don't have quite enough plastic on that spot. But if you go at it and let it melt in some areas like that, you'll wind up with it looking like a knot hole or a deep groove or something like that in the wood. So just carry the wrinkles all the way up to the tip, which the tip of your root is not going to be the tip of your noodle. The tip of your root is going to be this plastic that's coming off at the top. That's why I said it doesn't matter if you get the noodle to a point or not, because it's all going to be buried right in here anyways. Just got to make sure that it's all melted and all stuck together. Or it may start to come apart on you, because there's no glue or no spray adhesive or anything holding this together. It's all just held together by melting on itself. Spot's going away now. There's a good spot right here. You get that, Quinn? Good spot right here where the plastic is thinner, and I can come in with the heat gun and melt the noodle underneath along with the plastic. And once that's painted, it'll look like a knot hole. I'm not going to do this whole root. I'm going to just do this one side and then paint it so you can see how it will look finished. Because that will keep this video from being an hour long. Just take the tip of the X-Acto knife and run it down into the foam. And come back with the heat gun, and the heat gun will open up that cup. And it doesn't take a whole lot, just a little bit. So that opens up and it'll look like a split. And I did a few down towards the bottom of the roots when I made them for the noodle, or the arch too. You see that open up right there? Okay. A few more spots on here and then I will be ready to paint this. It takes a while going over it and going over it and going over it to get all of the plastic melted and stuck down and not have anything loose. Not have anything that still is like this, soft, and you want it all to be stuck together and almost crispy hard. Tip right there. Okay, that looks pretty good. I got a spot over here where it's stuck to the glove I need to fix. Alright. Now we can hit that with some paint. Oh, one more thing. I almost forgot. The hole in the middle. What I did to fill that in is I took stretch wrap and just rolled it up and wadded it and wadded it and rolled it up. So I had a good size wad. Cut it a few inches above. Stuff it down in the hole. Sticking to that glove. Let me switch the other glove. This one's terrible. End, cut in, melted in and blended. Come back down here where the wad is. And I just get it stuck on the edges. I don't worry about melting that whole. Get it stuck on the edges. I don't worry too much about getting the whole wad of plastic in there melted. That's just in there to fill the space down in the middle. Just a wad of plastic. It fills the hole in the middle of the noodle. And I just keep adding smaller pieces to patch in that spot. Make sure I got all the edges stuck down. see me squeezing it, the pool noodle does start to get soft as you heat it up. And by squeezing it, you can get rid of some of these hard edges that show up right on the sides. So they don't show up as much. Okay. Another kind of funny spot to work with is right in between the noodles right here. The way I was doing that is taking a longer strip, just pulling it to get the lines in it, and then I would just bring it down like that. And just bunch it up and melt it down and blend it in. Same as we did up here. And that will help to push the branches of the noodle root apart too. See, I've got some loose plastic there I need to get stuck down. I don't want to cover up my little knot hole there, so I'm going to kind of pull that off to the side. Just in here, I want to kind of get it stuck down. Yeah, it's a hard angle to get in it. I'm the best. Okay. Do some smaller pieces. Again, cut at an angle. Run them along the sides. Kind of bring all that together. And you see that pretty well blends in the transition between the two branches, and we would just do the same thing on that one. Cover it, bring it down, run a piece through here maybe, and blend it in the same way so that you get that nice transition between the roots. And if you get some holes in there, like right there, all you have to do is put a little heat on and pinch them down. And you can even heat it up and hold it together. Ow. And it'll stick. Okay, I think I'm ready to put some paint on this thing. I used this Rust-Oleum Painter's Touch 2X because it says bonds to plastic and it was cheap at Home Depot. And there goes the cap. And the noodle will melt if it's not covered by plastic, so make sure your noodle is completely covered before you put your base coat of black on. I'm going kind of heavy because I'm in a hurry to get this done and keep this video as short as I can. You know, it's pretty good. We're just doing this side anyway, so. But just make sure you've got everything covered. Don't have any blue showing, or green or orange or whatever color you use. Because when you're finished, if that shows through, it might look a little funny. Okay. Alright, I'll turn the fan on that and let it dry. And me and Quint will come back in a few minutes. And I'll do the dry brush coat. Alright, the dry brush coat I used was just Glidden exterior latex paint. And I like to pour it into a little container. Just a little bit for this. What I do, get some of my brush, knock most of it off. I come back and I go light, just dry brushing. You don't want to cover the whole thing, but I'm going to get it on there pretty good. You can go a little heavier than you normally would dry brushing something, because when we put the stain on there, and get down in any little cracks, we put the stain on there, it's going to highlight any spots that may have gotten covered over. If you went a little heavy with the dry brush coat, they'll stand back out again once the stain is put on. And this goes pretty quick. All the way up to the tip. And I'll go ahead and do a little spot on the side. It's a little too heavy. Just so you can see how the stain will bring it back out once that goes on. Okay, we'll do a spot right here. I'll go a little too heavy right there on purpose. Just so you'll be able to see how the stain will bring back that texture when it settles into all the little spots. I'll just go over and make sure I got everything covered. Said it goes pretty quick. And this is the exciting part where you start to get an idea of how it's going to look, all your little knot holes and cracks and things. That's where we split with the X-Acto knife, and then I heated it up and melted it to expand it open. It made that nice little knot hole there. Alright, and that's about it. We'll let this coat dry, and then me and Quinn will come back and we'll do the stain finish. Alright, the wood stain I'm using is just Minwax, Early American, and You don't really have to do this. If you wanted to leave it like this, you could just do maybe a couple other colors to add some variation. But I like to come back over it with the wood stain because it's not only does it seal it some, like right here where we went a little overboard with the dry brush, you put the stain over it, it gets down into the texture and brings it back. So any little spots like that where you might have gotten a little too crazy, they'll come right back when you put the stain on them, and it'll blend in with the rest. And I'm just barely knocking any of the stain off the brush. I'm going heavy and letting it drip and run everywhere so it gets down in all the little crevices and everything. I'll come back and kind of even it out some, but there's little undercuts. Get up under those too. I should have melted that plastic just a little bit more. It's a little too soft right there. I may be able to come back in a place like that, hit it again and get it to shrink, and then go back over it with some more stain. But just move the whole noodle all the way to the tip. And what I did on the arch, on the tips of the branches and the tips of all the little thorns sticking out, I came back after I put the stain on and I wiped it off a little bit to make the tips a little lighter color, just to add some variation and make it stand out more. But that's pretty much it. You just brush the stain on and it gets down in there and does its thing. Makes it look like wood. That came out looking good right there. A little bit more. Okay. That's it. Not a whole lot to them. And if you wanted to, I guess you could come back and make some lighter spots just to add some variation in there. And knock the stain off in a few spots. But it looks just fine if you don't do that. I didn't do it on the arch, except for on the tips of the thorns and things. But that's it. That's how you make a noodle rig.